An entitled HOA president called the cops on me for building my own cabin on my own land. She screamed about permits, violations, and trespassing, but she had no idea what she was about to discover. When the sheriff arrived with those property documents, her face went white. This is the most satisfying revenge story you'll ever hear. And if you love seeing entitled Karens get destroyed by their own arrogance, smash that subscribe button right now, because you do not want to miss how this ends. Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to Neighbor Wars HQ, the channel where we expose the most insane neighbor conflicts, HOA nightmares, and property disputes that'll make your blood boil. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because we post the craziest real-life stories 3 times a week, and trust me, today's story is an absolute banger. Now, before we dive in, let me set the scene for you. Imagine this. You've worked your entire life, saved every penny, and finally purchased your dream property. 47 acres of pristine lakefront land with crystal clear water, towering pine trees, and the most breathtaking sunsets you've ever seen. This isn't just any property. This is generational wealth. This is your legacy. This is where you're going to build your dream cabin and create memories with your family for decades to come. But there's just one problem, and her name is Patricia Henderson, the self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood, the president of an HOA that doesn't even have jurisdiction over your land, and quite possibly the most entitled Karen to ever grace this channel. This is MY's story, and buckle up because this is going to be wild. Let me take you back to where this all started. 3 years ago, I was scrolling through property listings online, just daydreaming really. I'm a software engineer by trade. I've been working remotely for about 8 years, and I'd always dreamed of having a place away from the city where I could disconnect, breathe fresh air, and just exist without the constant noise of urban life. That's when I saw it. The listing read, 47 acres, Crystal Lake waterfront, 1,200 feet of private shoreline, mature forest, incredible privacy. The pictures were breathtaking, just breathtaking. We're talking about the type of place you see in cabin magazines or on those luxury travel shows. The property had been in the same family for over 60 years, and they were finally ready to sell because the kids had all moved across the country and nobody was using it anymore. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The asking price was high. I'm not going to lie, we're talking mid-6 figures. But I've been saving aggressively. I'd made some smart investments and I was ready. I contacted my real estate agent, Jennifer, and we scheduled a viewing for the following weekend. When I first stepped onto that property, I knew. You know that feeling when something just clicks? When every cell in your body is telling you, this is it. That's what happened. The land was absolutely perfect. Gentle slopes down to the water, massive oak and pine trees providing natural privacy, and the lake itself was so clear you could see fish swimming 20 feet from shore. But I'm not an impulsive person. I spent the next 3 months doing my due diligence. I hired a surveyor to map the exact boundaries. I brought in an environmental consultant to check for any contamination or protected species. I hired a real estate attorney to review every single document related to the property going back 40 years. I checked with the county about zoning regulations, building codes, septic requirements, everything. And here's the critical part. Pay attention because this becomes very important later. There was no homeowners association with any authority over this land. Zero. Zilch. None. The property was completely free and clear, with no easements, no restrictions, no covenants running with the land. It was unincorporated county land, which meant I only had to answer to county regulations, nothing else. I closed on the property in November, and let me tell you, signing those papers was one of the proudest moments of my life. I owned 47 acres of pristine lakefront property. I was over the moon. Now, about a quarter mile down the road from my property, there's a small subdivision called Lakeview Estates. It's one of those planned communities from the 1980s, maybe 30 houses total, all on quarter-acre lots with their cookie-cutter designs and perfectly manicured lawns. Nice enough, but definitely not my style. I prefer privacy over proximity to neighbors. Here's where Patricia Henderson enters our story. Patricia, or Patty as she insisted everyone call her, was the president of the Lakeview Estates HOA. And when I say she was the president, I mean she had been the president for 17 consecutive years. Nobody else wanted the job because, well, nobody else wanted to deal with the drama and the petty complaints and the constant power trips. I first met Patricia about 2 weeks after closing on the property. I was walking the perimeter of my land, using my GPS and the survey documents to locate the exact corner markers, when I heard this voice behind me. Excuse me, sir. What do you think you're doing? I turned around, and there she was. Patricia was in her mid-60s, wearing a bright pink tracksuit, oversized sunglasses, and carrying a clipboard. Yes, a clipboard. She looked like she was about to conduct a military inspection. Hi there, I said, extending my hand for a shake. I'm Marcus Reit. I just purchased the 47 acres that runs along this stretch of the lake. She didn't shake my hand. Instead, she looked down at her clipboard and then back at me with this expression of absolute suspicion. I don't have any record of a property transfer in this area, she said, tapping her pen against the clipboard. This is Lakeview Estates territory, and any property sales need to be approved by the HOA board. I actually laughed. I thought she was joking, but her face remained completely serious. Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said, pulling out my phone to show her the property survey. My land is here, see? It's not part of Lakeview Estates. It's a separate, private parcel. She hardly looked at my phone. Well, we'll see about that. I'm Patricia Henderson, president of the Lakeview Estates HOA, and I take the integrity of our community very seriously. I'll have to see your paperwork, and you'll have to submit an application for any building you plan on doing. I didn't lose my temper. I admire your dedication to your community, Patricia, but again, my property is not a part of your HOA. I don't need anyone's permission to do something with my own land. She went red, like actually red. She jabbed her finger in my direction and told me, "We'll see about that, Mr. Reed. We have rules here, and everyone follows them." Then she literally spun on her heel and stomped off, the pink tracksuit swishing in some sort of ridiculous drama. I just stood there and thought, well, that was weird, but I figured it was just a misunderstanding. She'd look into it, realize her mistake, and that would be the end of it. Oh, how wrong I was. Over the next few months, I started serious planning for my cabin. I wasn't going to rush this. I wanted to design something that would blend with a natural environment, something sustainable and beautiful that would last for generations. I hired an architect, Susan, who specialized in environmentally conscious design. We spent weeks just walking the property, identifying the best building site that would maximize the view while minimizing tree removal. We chose a spot about 150 feet from the shoreline, on a gentle rise that would give us panoramic views of the lake, while keeping us above any potential flood zones. The design we came up with was stunning. A 2,400 square foot timber frame cabin with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the lake, a wraparound deck, a stone fireplace, and radiant floor heating. We were going to use solar panels for electricity, a modern septic system, and a well for water. Everything was designed to have minimal environmental impact while providing comfortable, modern living. I submitted my building permit application to the county in March. The plans were thorough, professionally drawn, and met every single county building code and environmental regulation. The county building department was actually impressed with how detailed everything was. While I was waiting for the permit approval, which typically takes 4 to 6 weeks, I started preparing the site. I hired a local excavation company to clear the building pad and install the driveway. This was all completely legal and didn't require any permits. It was just basic land preparation. That's when the problem started. I was on the property one afternoon, meeting with the excavation contractor to mark out exactly where we needed to work, when 3 cars pulled up. Out stepped Patricia, along with what I assumed were other HOA board members. They marched over to us like they were about to serve a warrant. "Stop! Stop everything right now!" Patricia was screaming, literally screaming, before she even got close to us. The excavation contractor looked at me like, "What is happening right now?" Patricia arrived, out of breath, clutching her ever-present clipboard. "You do not have approval to do any work on this property. This is a violation of Lakeview Estates regulations, and I am ordering you to cease and desist immediately." I took a deep, breath. Patricia, we've been over this. This property is not part of your HOA. I don't need your approval. That's where you're wrong. She shrieked, and I mean shrieked. This entire area falls under our community guidelines. You need HOA approval, you need to submit architectural plans to our committee, and you need to pay the assessment fees. One of the other board members, an older gentleman who looked deeply uncomfortable, leaned over and whispered something to Patricia. She swatted his hand away. I pulled out my property deed, which I'd started carrying with me, just in case. Patricia, look, this is my deed. This is the county surveyor's map. My property is not within your subdivision boundaries. I own from here. I pointed all the way down to the water and extending 1,200 feet along the shoreline. Your subdivision ends at Lakeview Drive. We're not even touching. She refused to look at the documents. Instead, she turned to the excavation contractor and said, "If you do any work on this property, I will report you to the county, I will file complaints with your licensing board, and I will make sure you never work in this area again." The contractor, bless him, just crossed his arms and said, "Lady, I've got a contract with Mr. Reed here, and he's got every legal right to clear his own property. Now, if you'll excuse us, we've got work to do." Patricia lost it. She started screaming about lawsuits, about calling the sheriff, about how we were destroying the community character and damaging collective property values. It was unhinged. Finally, after about 20 minutes of that circus, she left, but not before promising that this isn't over. After that confrontation, Patricia kicked her campaign into high gear. And let me tell you, this woman had time on her hands. It started with letters. Not emails, actual letters, sent via certified mail to my home address. The first one arrived 3 days after our confrontation. It was titled Notice of Violation and listed about 15 different alleged infractions, including unauthorized land clearing, failure to submit architectural plans, unpaid HOA dues, and my personal favorite, disruption of community harmony. The letter demanded that I immediately stop all work, pay $5,000 in back dues and fines, and submit to a hearing before the HOA board where I would have to justify my presence in the community. I showed it to my attorney, Richard, who literally laughed out loud. "This is completely baseless," he said. "They have zero authority over your property. Don't even dignify it with a response." But the letters kept coming. Every week, sometimes twice a week, Patricia would send another violation notice or final warning or legal action pending letter. My mailbox became a dumping ground for HOA nonsense. Then she escalated. She started showing up on my property unannounced. I'd be meeting with my architect or checking on the site work, and suddenly there would be Patricia taking photos with her phone and scribbling notes on her clipboard. "You're trespassing," I told her the third time this happened. "This is private property, and you need to leave." "I'm conducting an official HOA inspection," she responded. "I have every right to document violations. You have no rights on my property. Leave now, or I am calling the sheriff." She would leave, but she'd always have this smug smile, like she knew something I didn't. The county approved my building permit in late April. Everything was in order, all my plans met code, and I was legally clear to start construction. I was stoked. I posted a small update on my personal Facebook page, just something like building permit approved. Can't wait to start building my dream cabin. #LakeLife, #Dream Cabin, #New Beginnings within an hour. Patricia had found the post and left a comment. Illegal construction on disputed land. Authorities have been notified. You will be held accountable. I deleted her comment and blocked her. But the damage was done. Several of my friends reached out asking if everything was okay, if I was really building illegally. It was embarrassing. Then Patricia took it to the next level. She created a Facebook group called Stop Illegal Development at Crystal Lake. She posted photos of my property, photos of me, copies of her fake violation notices, and whipped up a frenzy among some of the Lakeview Estates residents who didn't know any better. She claimed I was building without permits, false, destroying wetlands, false, polluting the lake, false, bringing undesirable elements in the neighborhood. What does that even mean? Violating sacred community traditions, again what? The group got about 40 members, mostly other HOA busybodies who love the drama. They started sharing posts about protecting our community and standing up to greedy developers. I wasn't a developer. I was building one cabin for my personal use. My attorney sent a cease and desist letter to Patricia, demanding she stop harassing me, remove the defamatory Facebook posts, and acknowledge in writing that she had no authority over my property. She responded with her own letter, written on official Lakeview Estates HOA letterhead, claiming that my attorney's letter was harassment and intimidation, and that she was consulting with legal counsel about filing a lawsuit for damages to the community. It was exhausting, but I refused to let her stop me. I'd worked too hard and come too far. In early May, construction officially began. The foundation crew arrived bright and early on a Monday morning, ready to start digging footings and pouring concrete. It was an exciting day the day my dream started becoming real. I took the day off work to be on-site and oversee everything. The weather was perfect, clear skies, and mild temperatures. The crew was professional and efficient, and by mid-morning they'd marked out the foundation perimeter and started excavating. At 10:47 a.m., exactly, 3 vehicles came screaming down my driveway. I'm talking aggressive driving, dust clouds, the works. Out jumped Patricia and about 6 other people, including some I recognized from her Facebook group. Stop this illegal construction immediately. Patricia was yelling before she even got out of her car. The foundation crew stopped working and looked at me. I walked over to Patricia, trying to remain calm. Patricia, you need to leave. This is private property. I have all the necessary permits, and you have no authority here. I have every authority. She screamed. This is a community, and you're destroying it. These people, she gestured to the others, are concerned citizens who demand answers. One of the women with her, wearing a Lakeview Estates HOA committee t-shirt, started taking photos and video of the construction site. Another guy was writing down the license plate numbers of the construction crew's vehicles. What you're doing is illegal, I said firmly. You're trespassing, and you're harassing these workers who are here legally. We'll see about that, Patricia shouted. She pulled out her phone and, right there in front of everyone, dialed 911. Yes, she called 911 on an active construction site where everyone had legal permits and was doing legal work. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Yes, hello. I need to report illegal construction and trespassing, she said into the phone, walking away slightly. There's a man building an unpermitted structure on land that belongs to our community, and he's destroying the environment. The 911 dispatcher must have asked for the address because Patricia rattled off my property address. Yes, it's an emergency, she continued. He's got heavy machinery, and he's refusing to. Stop. We need law enforcement here immediately. She hung up and turned back to me with this triumphant smile. The sheriff is on his way, and when he sees what you're doing here, you're going to be arrested. I actually felt sorry for her in that moment. She was so confident, so absolutely certain that she was right and I was wrong. She genuinely believed that the sheriff was going to show up and arrest me for building on my own property. Patricia, I said quietly, you're making a huge mistake. The only mistake was you thinking you could come into our community and destroy everything we've built. She spat back. We stood there in tense silence for about 15 minutes. The construction crew didn't know what to do, so they just waited. Patricia and her entourage stood there, arms crossed, looking smug and victorious. Then we heard the siren in the distance. A county sheriff's SUV pulled up, lights flashing. Out stepped Deputy Rodriguez, a professional-looking officer in his 40s. He surveyed the scene, immediately reading the tension. Patricia rushed over to him before he could even close his door. Officer, thank God you're here. This man, she pointed at me, is conducting illegal construction on community property. He has no permits, no authorization, and he's destroying our lake. Deputy Rodriguez raised his hand. Ma'am, let me handle this. Please step back. He approached me. Sir, I'm Deputy Rodriguez. Can you tell me what's going on here? I took a deep breath, relieved finally to talk to somebody reasonable. Officer, my name is Marcus Reed. I own this property, all 47 acres of it. I have county-approved building permits to construct a residential cabin. These people, I nodded toward Patricia's group, are from a nearby HOA that has no jurisdiction over my land. They've been harassing me for months, and now they're trespassing on my property and disrupting legal construction. He's lying, Patricia shouted. This is HOA property. He's a squatter and a developer destroying our community. Deputy Rodriguez turned to Patricia. Ma'am, I asked you to step back. I will speak with you in a moment. He turned back to me. Do you have documentation? Property deed, building permits? Absolutely. I pulled out the folder I'd started keeping in my truck, which contained copies of my deed, survey, building permits, and the cease and desist letter my attorney had sent to Patricia. Deputy Rodriguez spent about 5 minutes reviewing everything. He looked at the survey map, compared it to the GPS location, checked the building permit against the work being done. Then he walked over to his vehicle and got on his radio. I could see him talking to someone, probably checking records of the county office. Patricia was getting antsy. What's taking so long? Arrest him. After about 10 minutes, Deputy Rodriguez came back. His expression was neutral, professional. Mr. Reed, your documentation appears to be in order. You own this property, and your building permits are valid. What? Patricia shrieked. That's impossible. This is community land. Deputy Rodriguez turned to face her. Ma'am, I've verified with the county assessor's office. Mr. Reed owns this parcel, tax ID number 847-239-0016, which comprises 47 acres and is not part of the Lakeview Estate subdivision. The property boundaries are well marked and recorded. Patricia's face turned from red to purple. But that can't be right. We've always considered this part of our community. What you consider and what is legally documented are two different things, ma'am, Deputy Rodriguez said firmly. Mr. Reed is conducting legal construction on his own property. You and your group are currently trespassing. The moment hung in the air. You could see the realization slowly dawn on Patricia and her supporters. The smug smiles were gone. The confident posture crumbled. Officer, these people have been harassing me for months, I said, threatening my contractors, spreading false information online, sending fake legal notices. I have documentation of all of it. Deputy Rodriguez nodded. Ma'am, I'm going to need you and your group to leave this property immediately. If you return without Mr. Reed's permission, you'll be cited for trespassing. But Patricia started. Immediately, ma'am. Patricia stood there, her clipboard hanging limply at her side, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Finally, she turned to her group and said, Let's go. This isn't over. They retreated to their vehicles and left, driving away slow, defeated. Deputy Rodriguez turned to me. Mr. Reed, I'm sorry you've had to deal with this. For the record, I'm going to document this incident. If they continue to harass you, call us immediately and we can pursue trespassing charges or possibly a restraining order. Thank you, officer. I really appreciate you handling this professionally. He tipped his hat and left. The construction crew stood there in stunned silence. Then the foreman said, Boss, that was the wildest thing I've seen in 20 years of construction. We all laughed, the tension finally breaking. And then we got back to work. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? The sheriff confirmed I own the land, Patricia was proven wrong, and everyone could move on with their lives. But it gets so much better. About a week after the sheriff incident, I was having coffee with my real estate attorney, Richard, discussing some final details about the property. We were sitting at a local cafe when he started chuckling to himself. What's so funny? I asked. I did some more research on your property after that whole HOA incident, he said. Do you know the full history of your land? I know it's been in the same family for 60 years, I said. Why? Richard pulled out some documents. So I went down to the county recorder's office and pulled some historical records. Your 47 acres? It's actually part of a much larger original parcel. Back in 1962, a man named Gerald Thompson bought 380 acres along Crystal Lake. Okay, I said, interested but not sure where this was going. Gerald Thompson was a wealthy businessman who wanted to create a private family compound. He owned all the land from what is now Lakeview Drive, all the way around to Cedar Point, the entire northern shore of Crystal Lake. Wait, so in 1981, Thompson's kids decided to subdivide part of the land. They created Lakeview Estates, those 30 houses on quarter-acre lots, and sold them off. But they kept the prime waterfront land, the 47 acres you now own, as the crown jewel. They always intended to build their own family estate there, but they never got around to it. I was starting to understand. So the HOA subdivision exists because the original landowner created it and sold off the less desirable parcels? Exactly, Richard said, grinning now. But here's the best part. I pulled the original plat maps and deeds. The Lakeview Estates HOA doesn't just have no authority over your 47 acres. Your property actually enjoys certain easement rights over the subdivision. What does that mean? It means that when the subdivision was created, certain legal rights were preserved for the owner of the waterfront parcel, your land. Specifically, there's an easement for lake access maintenance, which means you have legal authority to access and maintain the entire shoreline, even the parts that Lakeview Estates residents claim to use. My jaw dropped. Are you serious? Dead serious. There's also a clause about water rights. Your parcel has superior rights to the lake water for any residential use. And, he paused for dramatic effect, there's a clause stating that the waterfront parcel owner has veto power over certain HOA decisions that might impact lake access or water quality. Patricia has no idea about any of this, does she? Oh, it gets better, Richard said. I looked up the HOA's founding documents. Guess who was supposed to receive notification about all major HOA decisions, per the original covenant? The waterfront parcel owner? Bingo. Your predecessor was supposed to be notified about every significant HOA meeting, every major rule change, every assessment fee increases. For 40 years, the HOA has been operating without fulfilling that requirement, which means technically a lot of their decisions could be challenged as invalid. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. So what you're telling me is that not only does Patricia's HOA have zero authority over my land, but I actually have some authority over them? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Richard said. You could, if you wanted to, challenge years of their decisions. You could assert your easement rights and legally access parts of the shoreline they think are exclusive to subdivision residents. You could demand they halt certain activities that impact the lake. That's insane. That's what happens when an HOA president spends 17 years bossing people around without ever actually reading the founding documents, Richard said. I wasn't vindictive by nature. I didn't want to destroy the Lakeview Estates HOA or make life miserable for the regular residents who had nothing to do with Patricia's crusade. But I also wasn't going to let months of harassment go unanswered. Richard drafted a formal letter to the Lakeview Estates HOA board. What was in this letter? 1. A detailed timeline of Patricia's harassment. 2. Evidence of trespassing, defamation, and interference with legal construction. 3. The true legal relationship between my property and the subdivision. 4. My rights as the waterfront parcel owner, including easements and veto powers. 5. A demand for a formal, written apology from Patricia. 6. A demand that Patricia resign as HOA President. 7. A warning that further harassment would result in a lawsuit. We sent the letter via certified mail to every board member, including Patricia. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I answered. Mr. Reed? This is Donald Cooper. I'm on the Lakeview Estates HOA board. Can we meet? We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a restaurant halfway between our properties. Donald showed up with 2 other board members, the same gentleman who'd whispered to Patricia during one of her property invasions, and a woman named Sarah. They looked embarrassed before we even started talking. Mr. Reed, Donald began, we owe you an enormous apology. We had no idea about any of this. Patricia has been running the HOA like her personal fiefdom for years, and most of us just went along with it because nobody wanted the headache of challenging her. When we received your attorney's letter, Sarah added, we immediately pulled all the original HOA documents. We spent 2 days reading through everything. Patricia never told us about the waterfront parcel provisions. She never mentioned the easements or the notification requirements. She's been operating in complete violation of our own founding documents. The older gentleman, whose name was Robert, spoke up quietly. I'm embarrassed to say that I was with Patricia when she confronted you. She told us you were some out-of-state developer trying to build a commercial resort. She said you were lying about owning the land. We believed her because we trusted her. We've asked for her resignation, Donald said. She refused. So we called an emergency board meeting and voted to remove her. It was unanimous. I felt a wave of relief. I appreciate you telling me this. We're also going to issue a formal apology, Sarah said. We'll post it on our HOA website, in our newsletter, and we'll send a personal letter to you. What Patricia did was wrong, and we're going to make sure the whole community knows it. There's just one thing we'd like to ask, Donald said hesitantly. In your attorney's letter, it mentioned easement rights and various legal authorities you have over HOA decisions. We're not disputing any of that, but we'd like to ask if you'd be willing to just let things continue as they have been. Most of our residents are good people. They had nothing to do with this. I thought about it for a moment. I have no interest in disrupting your community. I just want to build my cabin in peace and enjoy my property. As long as nobody bothers me or trespasses on my land, I'm happy to pretend those easements don't exist. The relief on their faces was palpable. However, I added, if Patricia or anyone else starts up the harassment again, all bets are off. They did so immediately. Patricia did not go silently. When she was being taken off the HOA board, she sent an absolutely unhinged email to the whole Lakeview Estates mailing list. I got a copy of it from one of the residents who felt I should see it. The email was titled Betrayal and Corruption and went on for quite literally 8 pages. She claimed, everything else on the HOA board had been bought off by me. I was a real estate developer who secretly wanted to build a hotel. The other board member were jealous of her great leadership. She was the victim of a conspiracy. She would be seeking legal counsel to rectify this injustice. Residents should refuse to pay HOA dues until she was reinstated. It was delusional. Genuinely delusional. Several residents responded to her email with messages like, Patricia, please stop, and you're embarrassing yourself. One person wrote a detailed response explaining exactly how wrong Patricia had been and how much damage she'd done to the community's reputation. Patricia's Facebook group, Stop Illegal Development at Crystal Lake, imploded. Once people learned the truth, they started leaving in droves. Some posted angry messages about being lied to and manipulated. Within a week, the group was deleted. But Patricia wasn't done. She hired an attorney, or at least she claimed she did. She sent me one more letter, this time threatening to sue me for emotional distress, damage to reputation, and interference with HOA operations. Richard responded with an articulate letter detailing exactly how frivolous her claims were, and warned that we would countersue for harassment, defamation, and legal fees should she pursue action. We never heard from her or her attorney again. Construction continued through the summer and into early fall. Despite the drama with Patricia, the building process itself went along just fine. The timber frame went up in July. It was even more beautiful than I'd imagined. The stone fireplace was finished in August. Solar panels installed in September. By October, the cabin was substantially complete. I spent a number of weeks doing interior finishing work myself, installing light fixtures, painting, and adding personal touches. The first night I stayed in the completed cabin was late October. Built a fire in the fireplace, poured myself a glass of whiskey, and sat on the deck as the sun set over Crystal Lake. It was perfect, absolutely perfect, and the cabin became all I had dreamed it would be. I started spending weekends there, then long weeks, sometimes working remotely from the property. The peace and quiet were incredible. Wake up to the sound of loons on the lake, watch bald eagles hunt fish, see deer wander through the forest. It's like living inside a nature documentary. Installed a small dock, nothing but a simple wooden platform that I could sit and fish off or launch a kayak. Cleared some trails through the woods. I planted a lot of native wildflowers around the cabin. Every improvement made the property more beautiful and more mine. Friends and family starting to come visit, and everyone was blown away. This is incredible, my brother said on his first visit. You built paradise. And the best part? Complete privacy. No HOA rules about what color I could paint my deck. No restrictions on when I could use my grill or play music. No Patricia with her clipboard and her manufactured emergencies. Just peace. About a year after the cabin was completed, I was sitting on my deck one evening when I noticed a car slowly driving down my driveway. My heart sank for a moment, worried that Patricia had decided to resume her campaign. But it wasn't Patricia. It was Donald Cooper, the new HOA president, along with Sarah. "Marcus," Donald called out, waving. "Sorry to drop by unannounced.